Was it really just a suicide, or was there something far darker hidden behind the curtain? Kurt Cobain, the legendary frontman of Nirvana, the heartbeat of grunge, one of the brightest yet most fragile stars of the 90s. He wasn't just a musician, he was the voice of a generation. A voice for millions of young people who felt lost, angry, and alienated from the system. But behind all that light, there was a shadow quietly growing, and that shadow would ultimately shape his fate. Kurt Donald Cobain was born on February 20th, 1967, in the small town of Aberdeen, Washington. Life wasn't easy from the start. His parents' divorce left deep scars on his soul. At a young age, he became withdrawn, lonely, and fragile. Yet this loneliness later transformed into a treasure that would echo through his lyrics and music. From childhood, he showed an interest in art, drawing, painting. But when he picked up a guitar, he discovered his true passion. The guitar became his refuge. The chaos of life, the unrest in his family, the inability to connect with society, all of it resonated through the strings. During his high school years, he fell in love with punk and alternative rock. Music wasn't just a hobby for him, it was his way of survival. No one could have guessed that from the bleak streets of Aberdeen, he would form a band that would shake the world. But in 1987, when he joined Chris Novoselic to create Nirvana, he not only changed his own life, but he also changed music history forever. Nirvana quickly became the symbol of Seattle's grunge scene. Cobain's raw, authentic voice merged with the anger of society. But here's the question. Could someone as fragile as Kurt Cobain really carry the weight of such immense fame? For him, fame didn't bring freedom. It deepened his loneliness. The explosive success of Smells Like Teen Spirit only made the burden heavier. Suddenly, millions of eyes were on him. Every word, every move became a headline. Yet Cobain was never a traditional rock star. For him, the stage wasn't about glamour. It was an echo of an inner scream. Smashing his guitar on stage, pushing his voice to the limit, these weren't just performances. They were expressions of his inner pain and rage. Fame and fortune on one side, depression, health problems, and drug addiction on the other, all of it slowly consumed him. And that's why people still ask today, was Kurt Cobain's death truly his choice? Or was he a victim of the system, of fame, and of the dark forces surrounding him? As Nirvana exploded into global fame, Kurt Cobain's life turned into a storm he couldn't escape. The world saw him as a rock star, but behind the flashing cameras, the sold-out arenas, and the screaming fans, he was a man who felt like a stranger to himself. How could someone who gave so much voice to others feel so voiceless inside? That is one of the great contradictions of his story. The early 90s marked a cultural earthquake. With Nirvana's Nevermind album in 1991, grunge became not just a genre, but the anthem of a generation. Smells Like Teen Spirit was blasting everywhere, from high school hallways to underground clubs and massive stadiums. Overnight, Kurt went from playing small bars to being the face on every magazine cover. But what happens when someone who never asked for fame suddenly becomes the center of the world's attention? Kurt wasn't chasing celebrity. In fact, he despised the idea of being a commodity. He didn't want to be worshipped. He wanted to be understood. Yet the machine of fame doesn't care about what an artist wants. It takes, it consumes, and it demands more. Every interview, every headline, every fan expectation added weight on his already fragile shoulders. His marriage to Courtney Love in 1992 only amplified the spotlight. Their relationship was chaotic, passionate, and constantly scrutinized by the media. The birth of their daughter, Frances Bean, gave Kurt a brief glimpse of hope and grounding. But even fatherhood couldn't silence the demons that haunted him. The question is, could Kurt have escaped If he had found true peace in family life, or was his destiny already written by the forces around him? Drugs, especially heroin, became both his shield and his prison. He often described his addiction as a way to cope with chronic stomach pain, but many believe it was also his escape from the unbearable pressure of life in the public eye. The more famous he became, the deeper he sank into dependency. What does it say about fame when the very thing that brings someone global adoration is also what drives them to seek numbness? Concert tours were another battlefield. Fans saw electrifying performances, Cobain screaming into the microphone, sweat pouring, guitar strings snapping. But behind the scenes, he was exhausted, frail, and sometimes too sick to even stand. In Rome, just months before his death, he overdosed on a mixture of drugs and alcohol. Was it a cry for help? Or was it an early attempt at leaving the world? Nobody truly knows. By 1993, Nirvana released In Utero, an album rawer, darker, and more personal than anything before. Songs like Heart-Shaped Box and All Apologies felt like diary entries sung out loud. The lyrics hinted at pain, confusion, and resignation. Listeners were left to wonder, was he telling us what was coming all along? Friends, bandmates, and even close family noticed the changes. They spoke about how he seemed more withdrawn, more fragile, sometimes completely unreachable. He would vanish into silence for hours, lost in thought, only to return to the stage and pour out everything in music. Could anyone have saved him if they had reached him in those moments? The culture of the time also played a role. The 90s were filled with tabloid headlines, invasive paparazzi, and relentless speculation. Kurt wasn't allowed privacy. He wasn't allowed silence. Every step outside his door was judged, analyzed, and twisted into a story. In many ways, it wasn't just his inner demons. It was the world itself closing in on him. By early 1994, the storm inside and outside had reached its peak. He had fame, money, a family, and yet he felt emptier than ever. In March, he entered rehab in California, trying once again to pull himself back. But even that was short-lived. Days later, he walked out, disappearing into the unknown. Friends worried, the media speculated, and fans were left in confusion. And then, April 5th, 1994, Seattle. Kurt Cobain was found dead in his home, with a shotgun at his side. Officially, the cause was ruled suicide. But was it really that simple? Why did the note he left behind raise so many questions? Why did the circumstances feel so unclear, almost staged? To this day, fans and conspiracy theorists alike argue over what truly happened. The rise and fall of Kurt Cobain wasn't just the story of a musician. It was the story of a man crushed under the weight of his own genius, his pain, and a culture that demanded too much. But here's the haunting question. If Kurt had lived, would he have escaped his demons? Or would fame have kept him in chains forever? Kurt Cobain's death in April 1994 left the world frozen in disbelief. One of the most influential voices of his generation was gone at just 27 years old. The official story said suicide, but almost immediately, doubt began to creep in. Fans, journalists, even some investigators started asking questions. Why were there inconsistencies in the scene? Why did parts of the note feel less like a farewell and more like a professional statement about leaving the music industry? Could something else have happened that night in Seattle? For many, the tragedy became more than just a personal loss. It turned into a mystery. The so-called 27 Club grew larger. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, all gone at the same age. And now Kurt Cobain joined them. Was it coincidence, or is there something darker about how fame consumes its brightest stars so young? Conspiracy theories exploded. Some believed Kurt was murdered. possibly linked to his tumultuous relationship with Courtney Love. Others argued that the suicide ruling ignored key details: the shotgun, the drugs in his system, the timing. So many unanswered questions kept the case alive in documentaries, books, and debates for decades. Even today, almost 30 years later, you can find forums, podcasts, and YouTube videos filled with people still trying to solve the puzzle. But beyond the theories, beyond the what-ifs, there's the undeniable impact of his absence. Nirvana ended instantly. The band that had become the voice of a generation was silenced overnight. Dave Grohl went on to form Foo Fighters. Chris Novoselic stepped back into political and social work. But the heart of Nirvana, the raw, aching, fragile, brilliant heart, was gone. And the world has never truly recovered from that silence. Kurt's legacy is complicated. He was an artist who hated the machine of fame, yet he became its unwilling centerpiece. He was a man who wanted authenticity, but was trapped in the most artificial industry of all. His songs were filled with pain, but also with honesty that millions clung to. Even now, when you hear Come As You Are, or Lithium, or Smells Like Teen Spirit, it feels less like music and more like a message carved into time. It feels like he's still speaking to us, reminding us that even in darkness, there is truth. The world continues to ask, if Kurt Cobain had lived, what would his music have become? Would Nirvana still be here, evolving with every decade? Would he have walked away from fame altogether and lived quietly with his family? Or would the same struggles have followed him no matter where he went? These questions don't have answers, and maybe that's why people can't let go. His story feels unfinished, like a song that ends mid-chord. And yet, maybe that's the point. Maybe Kurt Cobain's life wasn't meant to be a closed chapter, but a mirror reflecting the cost of fame, the fragility of genius, and the loneliness hidden beneath applause. His death was a tragedy, but his voice, raspy, raw, and filled with emotion, still lives on in every person who has ever felt lost, misunderstood, or broken. So the mystery remains. Was it really suicide? Or is there something we may never know? Did Kurt choose to leave? Or was that choice made for him by the crushing weight of fame and expectation? The debate will never truly end because legends never fully die. They linger, shaping the way we think, feel, and question the world around us. And now, as we close this story, the legacy of Kurt Cobain continues to echo. His life was short, his struggles were deep, but his music still shakes the walls of every generation that discovers it. That's the power of a voice that refuses to fade. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Who should we cover in the next episode of Parallel Lives? Your suggestion might become our next deep dive. And tell us, what do you think really happened to Kurt Cobain?